So what do farmers need to do to get started? Well, there's 5 basic first steps that need to occur. First, they need to inventory their assets. Secondly, the family or those involved in the process need to discuss their values and set goals based on those values. They need to identify the issues. They need to build a team. And they need to choose the right tools to achieve the goals and fulfill the values. It's critical here to emphasize that the process will take time and effort. And each component is important and interdependent. From the what, inventorying your assets, to the why, setting your values and goals, to the how, identifying issues, building the team, and choosing the tools. So taking an inventory of your assets might seem simple, and it is. You need to know what you own and how you own it before you can transfer it. But it's not always so easy. For example, what's the value of farmland? Is it valued at its agricultural value? Is it at its value for development? Or as a vacation or second home? It's important to remember that ACEP-ALE projects seek to conserve the land at its agricultural value for its agricultural use. In addition, who owns the property? This is where a careful reading of the deed or ownership documents needs to occur. Real estate titles don't always match assumptions. It's important to know for sure. What about debts that are owed or liens on the real estate? It's important to remember when you're inventorying assets that you need to determine both assets and liabilities. What about rental property that you may own in town, or stock that you purchased or inherited, or those life insurance policies, or any retirement accounts that you have? All of these need to be identified and valued. It's important to make a complete and accurate list, and there are worksheets available for your use on the FIC website. It's critical to discuss values and set goals. Obviously, the values drive the goals, and a discussion, particularly among family members, is critical. Communication by and between people involved in the process is key. Consensus is certainly desirable, but not always necessary or practical. But at the end of the day, the decision makers will need to set the agenda. Goals should reflect the values, and your basic goals should be articulated and included in your planning. That said, I think we need to recognize that all goals may not be achievable because some are inconsistent or perhaps not practical. For example, it may be difficult, if not impossible, to achieve the goal of farmland protection, continuing the farm business, keeping land in the family, maximizing financial return, and minimizing transfer taxes. You will need to work with your advisors to develop the appropriate and feasible trade-offs among these various goals. It's critical to note, though, that for ACEP-ALE projects, in addition to the conservation of the land, which is critical, the agricultural business will be able to keep that land in production and use. This is a very significant difference from other conservation projects that often retire or remove land from agricultural production or use. And those projects are much less reliant on the continuation of an agricultural business to farm it. In order to accomplish farm succession goals, what issues will need to be addressed? Some examples include development of management skills. For example, secondary education, off-farm training, work on other farms is commonly used, or on-farm training and mentoring. How do you value the assets? There are a number of ways to value assets, including a formula, a predetermined set price, or as most commonly is used, an appraisal. Here it is critical to have an appraiser who's both knowledgeable and experienced valuing agricultural assets, including, in particular, farm and ranch land. How will the assets be paid for or financed? There are a number of options here. They can be financed internally by the family, a third party, a bank loan, for example, or, as I'll discuss later, a gift. Conservation easements are certainly part of the process in the ACEP-ALE program, and they're critical if long-term farmland protection is a priority. It's important to build an advisory team. In my experience, the team approach is the best way to approach this process because it's very difficult, if not impossible, for one advisor to cover all the bases. You may want to include a farm business advisor, a tax advisor, financial advisor, and a legal advisor. You may also want to have a coordinator or a coach. This can sometimes be a family member or a close friend or a trusted advisor who can help guide the process and keep it moving. And it's not uncommon for the process to get stuck, especially early on, when trying to reconcile values and goals among the various participants in the process. This is, in some cases, where some form of agricultural mediation could be helpful. Essentially, this would be a neutral third party to help sort out some of the differences. Next, I'll cover selected tools used to implement farm succession plans.